You don't need another strategy. Here's what you actually need to figure out why you can't implement the things that you already know. I'm Dr. Brooklyn Storme, former psychologist, now business coach, and I help women just like us to build profitable private practices, usually in under 12 months. Being neurodivergent means I see the patterns that other coaches miss, but it also means I'm a truth teller, so I'm not interested in giving you any business advice that sounds good or might be trending, but doesn't actually work for us. Welcome to the Practice Momentum podcast, where we're going to get your private practice sorted out. Thanks so much for being here, and let's get on with the next episode. Welcome back to another episode. It has been a big day over here. Today in Psych Practice Momentum, I taught the ladies how to use AI and get it set up so that they can get better output. And this, in turn, will allow them to then use some of the other things that I'm going to be teaching them to do things like get clients, create automations, get back their time, move from a one-to-one model to a one-to-many model, all these kinds of things. And it is just so exciting. And to see some of their faces just light up, not even realizing, oh my gosh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this, I could do that. And it just felt so good. So it was just a bonus workshop that I gave them from the other part of my business, which is called Ethically AI. But since then, some of them have been saying, oh, can we do another workshop? What will we learn in the next one? So it's really exciting. If you hear shaking in the background, you know what that is. You know who likes to get up and shake around when I start talking, and it's not at him. But anyway, he'll settle down in a minute. Today, what we're going to talk about is cancellation policy that so many women in private practice that I work with, when they first come to me, they're not enforcing. And why we need to, because it's leaving roughly $20,000 on the table for many of the clients that I have worked with in the past. Okay. So, I'm just going to dive straight in. Let's get into it. So let's talk about the policy that you've all got with your forms. You've got it on maybe your website as well. Okay. But so many people just don't enforce it. They don't use it. They don't apply it. I don't even like the word enforce. I think it's an agreement. I really feel like when somebody is going to work with you, they either tick the box when they're booking that says they agree to the terms of service, or they agree to the, conditions, or they sign your paperwork bundle, before they see you. And in there, it clearly says, hey, if you want to work with me, cool, we can, if we tick all of the boxes and everything. But one of those boxes is that you and I have an understanding that if you forget about your appointment, if you can't make it, and there's not enough notice given, that you're still going to pay me, right? And the client says, of course, I agree to that, and they sign it. So anyway, this is what we're talking about here. It's your cancellation policy. You know the one, the 48 hours notice required or the full fees apply. So it is right there in your intake paperwork. Your client signs it, and then when they text you 2 hours before their session to cancel, you just say, absolutely no worries. You check in, make sure they're okay, and then you reschedule. All right. But the financial reality is that, what's happening here is I want to show you what it could be actually costing your practice. So let's say, for example, you charge $180 a session. And let's imagine that you get one cancellation per week that's late. Okay. Now that's $180 lost if you don't claim it. Now, if you work 48 weeks in a year, you've just lost nearly $9,000. Okay. So most therapists I work with get more than one cancellation a week. Usually, depending on how many clients they work with, they're going to average, about 3, give or take. So then we're kind of looking at between $17,000 and $26,000 a year lost. You're just giving it away. And the reason that you're doing this, it's not because you're a kind person. I'm sure that you really are. It's not that you're being super generous, like I'm sure that you are. It's not so much about being compassionate and all of those kinds of things either. I'm sure you're that too. But what I think is going on is something a lot deeper. I feel like you're stuck in therapist only identity and you're confusing compassion with poor business management. I said it. But you're not alone, and it happens. And there's lots of reasons why it happens. So I know exactly what it's like in your body. I know how it feels in your body when someone cancels late. Maybe your chest tightens, like you seize physically when you're thinking about, oh no, Brooklyn said I need to process the cancellation fee. Oh, I think I'm going to do a tidy vomit in my mouth or something. And you're thinking, oh, it's not fair. I don't want to take money from somebody if they didn't get a service. They're really going through a hard time. Oh, this person's so nice. I don't want to do it to them. Oh, they can't afford it. Oh no, what if I do it and they never come back and I really need clients? Or what if I do it and then they go and write something horrible about me on my Google My Business or something, And I'm a therapist. I should be totally understanding of all of this, right? There's some of the common self-talk scenarios that so many of us, myself included, when I first started, used to experience as well. I used to be such a big people pleaser. I didn't want to offend anyone. I didn't want to upset anyone. I was in lack mindset, scarcity mindset, fear mindset. I was in all of that, right? And not realizing that it was damaging my business. So I totally get it. But what's happening here is that this is, you're in stage 2 of the identity integration pathway. So this is where you kind of, inverted commas, know that you need to be processing that fee. You have the policy in writing. They've agreed to it. They're expecting to be charged, but there's something happening for you where you can't do it without overwhelming guilt because you're applying your in-session therapist identity to what's essentially a business process. Right? A business decision, a business activity over here. In session, when you work with your clients, you're all about being super accommodating and not being very judgmental. And that's really appropriate, ethical, clinical behavior to have. But when somebody, dishonors an agreement with you or they break their agreement or something like that, that's different. And now we're talking about a business context. And that really requires you to put on your business hat. And your business owner self says, do you know what? We've got an agreement. That's okay. You know what it is. I know what it is. The fee applies. How would you like to pay for that? And so that's what ideally needs to be happening. You know what? I worked with a psychologist recently. She'd never charged a single cancellation fee in 8 years of working. 8 years of working. She had the policy in place. All of her clients signed it, but she never used it. Not a single time. And so when we did the numbers, she had lost almost $96,000 over that period of time. That's nearly 6 figures in lost income. When we worked this out together on our call, she cried. She cried. She burst into tears. Not because of the money, though. Being upset about the money was definitely hurtful for her. But what really sort of caught her was the realization that she'd been undermining herself for nearly a year. And it was a very, very powerful moment. And do you know what? From that point on, it never happened again. And she did charge her fees. There's something about the therapeutic relationship too that I think we really do need to unpack for a moment. And that is this belief that, so many counsellors, psychologists and social workers say things to me when we work together, like they don't use the cancellation fees because they don't want to damage the relationship that they've got with their clients. And I totally get it. It's hard, especially when you're in private practice and everything's on your shoulders. You're not only doing the work with your clients, but you're also writing the letters, communicating with the doctor, taking payments, marketing, right? You're juggling all of the balls. So yeah, they don't use the fees because they don't want to damage the therapeutic relationship. And they think that having money conversations are going to rupture that relationship. They think that boundaries will cause a client to leave. But that's BS. And I can say that because the research shows exactly the opposite. In fact, the research shows that clear boundaries and clear agreements actually strengthen therapeutic relationships. And do you know why? Sure you do. For the same reason that when you encourage your clients to create a boundary, it's exactly the same. They create safety and they create predictability. If you think about it from the perspective of perhaps even attachment theory, what creates a secure attachment? Consistent, predictable, boundaried relationships. When you say one thing, but you do something else, when you have a policy that you don't use, you're creating insecurity with your clients. And your client doesn't really know what's real anymore because the rules change. They don't know what the rules actually are. It's like 1 minute they're agreeing to pay you if they late cancel or they fail to attend their appointment, and they're expecting to pay, and then you're like, no, I'll waive it. And then they're thinking, oh, are you sure? Like, I know I'm meant to be paying it. And you say, no, that's fine. Hold on to your money. But if it happens again next time, right? And then the client kind of goes away from that conversation feeling a little bit confused. I mean, relieved they didn't have to pay probably, but also like a little bit confused. You feel calm. Now your nervous system can sort of come back to where, it feels balanced and things like that. But what happens when the client fails to attend a second time? What then? Now you're in a real pickle because you know that you need to charge it and you still don't want to because nothing has shifted for you between the first time and the second time. But now it's kind of worse because now you're feeling the pressure of charging it. So what happens? Some clients of mine, some women in private practice will just waive it again, okay? And then start justifying it with all of these excuses and self-talk and things like that. So yeah, when your clients don't know what the rules really are, they start to get confused, and this can have, knock-on effects. So here's what you're not seeing. When you don't use your cancellation policy, what's happening is that you're teaching your client that actually agreements don't matter. You're teaching them that they don't have to take responsibility for their choices. And you're teaching them that you'll rescue them, or somebody will rescue them from having to face consequences. And you have to ask yourself, is that really therapeutic at the end of the day? Or maybe even, is it enabling? You know what? I had a client who finally did start using her cancellation policy. And in the beginning, she was so scared. She was terrified. But she charged it the first time, and the person that she charged it to had been a long-term client, had been coming every single week just about for roughly about 2 years, I think it was. This time the cancellation came in a couple of hours before the session, and my client just sent her client the invoice, and she was so nervous about it. She hesitated, and then finally she just hit send and prayed for the best. But you know what ended up happening? The client paid it. The client apologized, sent an email back apologizing, said that, she would be more careful. She just totally forgot that she had the appointment. She didn't leave at all, and the relationship didn't rupture. In fact, the client later told her that she actually, she was more than happy to pay it, and she respected that boundary, and it strengthened their relationship. The thing is that since implementing consistent cancellation policies across my client base of women in private practice, the average retention rate increases. It increases to almost 85%. They don't leave, generally. They're staying. And they're showing up now more reliably because they know that the agreement is real. Yeah. So in the framework that I use inside Practice Momentum, right, in the Practice Momentum model, that's based on 3 pillars. And one of those pillars is capacity. And by that, capacity is referring to your energetic capacity to be able to run the business. And capacity has 2 components. It has the component of structure, that's your systems, your processes, your policy, but it also has the structure of being able to receive, okay? You will pick up, if you've been in my world for a little while, I'm actually talking about masculine and feminine energy over here, right? Structure really means systems, boundaries, as I said, your policies, tracking your KPIs, all those kinds of things. When you have those clear structures in place, your own nervous system relaxes because things are taken care of. Even when you feel like you're having a difficult day or a difficult situation with a client, the business continues to go because it's no longer practitioner dependent. It's a lot of that heavy lifting has been taken off your shoulders. You know what to expect. You have predictability. And that reduces cognitive load, right? This is my thing lately, cognitive load. Like, I think so many of us run around like headless chickens sometimes in our businesses because we're trying to remember everything. Like, how do I onboard somebody? What's my intake process? Oh, what do I do when this thing happens over here? But when you've got the systems, you've got a process, and at the push of a button, it gets activated and you don't have to think about it anymore. You just have to remember what your process was, right? So yeah, it also reduces anxiety, especially critical for people like me and like many of you and many of my clients who are also neurodivergent. Very, very important. But also when your nervous system feels safe because those structures are working for you in the background, it makes it so much easier for you to actually receive. And that receiving can look like receiving new clients, but it can look like receiving money and receiving new opportunities for your business. But when those structures are weak, like a policy that you're not using, you're leaving yourself in a position of running the business in survival mode. Your nervous system is going to be very easily triggered. You can find yourself on high alert, and it's going to make it really hard for you to receive properly because you're constantly anxious, in this case, about money. So weak boundaries create financial anxiety, and that in turn creates more difficulty applying your boundaries, which in turn creates more financial anxiety. And before you know it, you're stuck in a loop. And the only way out is to enforce the you know what policy. You got to do it. You got to enforce the damn policy. It's got to happen. You know, I worked with somebody once and she was making about $50,000 a year. I think it was like $48,000 a year. And she was working 42 weeks, right? She had chronic anxiety and terrible, terrible sleep when we first started working together. So we implemented 3 things. The first was we raised her fee, right? We increased the fee. It was $120 originally. We brought it up to an average session fee for a counsellor in Australia, which was $160. She started using her cancellation policy. And the other thing that she did was she wasn't allocating time in her work week to do any of the business development, right? She'll go into Halaxy, she would see her calendar, her diary, and in her mind, that time or that availability was just for clients. She was not booking 2 or 3 hours or a morning or an afternoon or anything like that to do the businessy stuff, right? Reconcile invoices, catch up on her admin, do her notes. She wasn't doing that. So all that stuff was happening in her personal time, in her downtime. So the third thing that we were able to put in place for her was to support her in blocking off some planning time. Now, as you know, business happens in 90-day cycles. And, you know, within 90 days, she was then making $67,000. annualized, working 30 hours a week, sleeping through the night. The structures that she had been able to put in place created her with safety, and that safety enabled her to receive. That receiving increased her revenue for her business, right? The shift that you need to make is from thinking to yourself, oh, if I use this cancellation policy, I'm ripping people off, I'm greedy, I'm taking money, all of those kinds of things, to something along the lines of, when I use this policy, it actually protects the therapeutic container for my client and I, and also it protects the sustainability of my business, which means that I get to do more work with more clients and also without burning out. You can be deeply, deeply, deeply compassionate about why somebody cancelled late and charge the fee. You can do both simultaneously. In fact, charging the fee is compassionate in a way because it maintains a structure that allows you to keep practicing. Your cancellation policy isn't about punishing anybody. It's about protecting your capacity to continue to work with your clients. When you lose income as a result of late cancellations, you get stressed. When you're stressed, you can't show up as your best self, right? When you can't show up as your best self, that has a ripple effect to your clients. So this policy that you have around cancellation fees is there for a reason. It protects everybody. Here's how I teach my clients to respond when someone cancels late. I might just say, do you know what? I absolutely understand that things come up, but, as per our agreement, the cancellation fee does apply. I have your card on file. Do you want me to just process that payment for you now? And let's get you a new appointment in the diary. That's it. No explaining, no apologies, no negotiating, no waiving things. Just be clear, be kind, be boundaried. Okay? Now, when you first start using your cancellation policy, maybe you may feel super uncomfortable about it, okay? Maybe your inner therapist is going to start screaming at you and you're going to want to backtrack. This is normal, okay? This is what happens when you're starting to shift identity and you're doing it anyway. And this is where tracking becomes critical. So you need to track things like your key performance indicators, okay? Because they allow you to collect evidence, and evidence collection is so important because it overrides the emotional stories that so many of us attribute when things happen, right? But when we're looking at numbers, it's black and white data, and we get to see that data as information. And it makes things so much easier. It puts you back in a position of control in your business. Without knowing your numbers and without tracking things, what ends up happening is you become the opposite of, logical and forward thinking and, prepared and all those kinds of things. You become emotional, you become reactive. Instead of dealing with things as they happen, you say, oh, I need to pause, right? Oh, I need a break, I need to get out, I need to hands off it for a hot minute. That doesn't help you, doesn't help the client, doesn't help your business. In fact, it puts the business on hold. And while the business is on hold, it's not making money if you don't have the systems in place, but it's also not helping your clients because you're not there to work with them, right? So, tracking becomes critical for that reason. Across my own client base, average patterns can generally look like, in the first month of using a cancellation policy, maybe 2 or 3 clients might push back a little bit. That's standard, okay? But guess what else? The data also shows that more than 90% of the time, clients pay without it being an issue. What does that tell us? It tells us that We're the ones with our own money stories, with our own issues, and we're projecting them. We're anticipating how a client's going to feel, but actually, client doesn't even feel like that, okay? You might have 1 or 2 people leave. Okay, that's okay. But guess what else happens? Your cancellation rate drops by 40% on average within 60 days because your clients start to manage their schedules more carefully now. Your revenue can begin to increase by $1,200 to $2,800 per month on average, depending on what your fee structure is and, all of that kind of jazz. But for the clients that I work with, this is the data. How do I know this? It's because I track the data. Well, they track the data. I look at the data and help them. But then I have a great big pool of data over here where I can start to see patterns emerging. And that's how I can share this information with you. So here's how you know when you've been able to integrate things, right? And that's when charging your cancellation fee just feels very matter of fact. It's not that it's easy. It's not that it's joyful. It still might be a bit uncomfortable, but it doesn't take you out. It's not agonizing. It's not weighing you down. You're not punishing yourself. When you can send that invoice without feeling, so gross and so uncomfortable about it, that's when you started to shift your identity. So here's my challenge for you this week. I want you to go away, have a look at your cancellation policy. Like, hopefully you've got one. Check, what's the process? Are you using it? Why not? What's it costing you if you're not? All those kinds of things. What are the stories that you're telling yourself? What might you be afraid could happen? What are you protecting? Because do you know what? I promise you, it's costing you way more than money by not using your cancellation policy. So if you're ready to start getting more comfortable with your boundaries without feeling guilty about it, or if you're ready to start running the business more as a business owner, you might want to go and take my free private practice assessment. It's going to show you exactly where you're getting stuck and what needs to shift in your practice for the money, but also for other areas too, like perhaps your marketing and your visibility and things like that. So your cancellation policy isn't only about money, it's also about your integrity and the integrity of your business. It's about modeling for your clients and teaching your clients that things that they agree to matter. Their word matters, and so does yours. It's about creating that structural safety that provides you with the opportunity that allows you to do your very best work for them when they do turn up. And it's also about respecting yourself enough to run a sustainable business. And you know what? You absolutely deserve that. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the podcast. If there's anything you need, just scroll down to the show notes. I've put a whole lot of resources and links there for you. Thank you so much for being part of my world, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Private Practice Podcast. So as you reflect on today's insights, imagine creating real success in your private practice without going down rabbit holes or exhausting yourself with business activities that don't move the needle. With Practice Momentum, you have push of a button help available on demand. It's like having an expert in your pocket ready to guide you whenever you need it. Visit brooklynstorme.com to discover how Practice Momentum can transform your approach to building a thriving practice. I'm Dr. Brooklyn Storme, and I'll see you next time as we continue exploring the mind, business, and spirit of private practice success.